Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, we're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally as important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else. Not in the media and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. I'm Dan Proft, morning drive talk show host on AM 560 with Amy Jacobson, Chicago's Morning Answer. You can hear Monday through Friday from 5 to 9 a.m. And joining me on this installment of Illinois Rising is John Tillman, CEO of the Illinois Policy Institute, illinoispolicy.org. John, welcome.
Great to be here, Dan, and all my opinions today will be my personal opinions, not representing those of the Institute.
Thank you for that disclaimer. This is why you didn't have to pay your attorney $250 an hour to show up today.
And that's actually why I was able to show up, because I was not incarcerated.
There you go. So we had an election this week. It's not an election where you get huge participation, although there were some races where participation was much more substantial than normal. These municipal elections for school board and township board and municipal and village and city boards, as well as some referendum questions with respect to bond issues, mainly for schools. And just wanted to get your take, John, on what you saw happen on this past Tuesday, April 4th, and if you saw the same thing I did, which is signs that the revolt is percolating and bubbling to the surface throughout the state, encouraging signs in a sense.
Very much so, and I think that's one of your favorite phrases, that we have to stoke the revolt to turn over the established powers that are destroying the state. And I think we saw that in a bunch of ways, and I think the one that you actually participated in down in Orland Park in the McLaughlin Peacock race, where McLaughlin was this 20-plus year incumbent, spiked his pension at the end, is going to end up getting a $2 million pension as a result of that. Just the classic, as you would explain, and I think you know the details better than I do, Chicago way.
Right.
And and of course, it also reflects the long abdication of Republicans in the south suburbs and in general to local government. Meanwhile, by the way, Speaker Madigan and his political operation was operating everywhere, all over the state, trying to consolidate power in these places, and they were rebuffed over and over and over again, in part because of your work and others. And so I think the point of this is, especially in these low turnout elections, is that there's the water is simmering, and all it takes is somebody to put a little more heat on there and turn it to a full boil, which you and many others did. And there are people in politics in Illinois who don't seem to understand that all over, from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And I think we need to turn up the heat.
On the Republican side.
Yes, I'm definitely referring to the Republican side.
Well, here's the thing, right? So what happens, I think you see where people were successful, is you have good candidates that are making a case for conservative reform, really, is what they're talking about. And then they generate the requisite support. So, I mean, a lot of focus on Orland Park and my independent expenditures PAC participation there, but it doesn't happen without a good candidate in Keith Peacock to be a credible alternative to the established order, to the status quo, to McLaughlin, who's been there for 24 years. So that's one thing. And by the way, just as an aside, I had this fun conversation, which I know you'll enjoy, with the Chicago Tribune reporter. And it speaks to your discussion of the Democrats' focus on local, where Republicans have been kind of asleep at the switch for too long. Madigan running a slate in Chicago Ridge, for example, which was thankfully turned back. But people complaining, this is the Tribune report to me, people saying, well, all this money, this is money we are not used to seeing at the municipal level, and this and that, and outside influence. And so let me understand something. $200,000 is what my PAC spent on behalf of Keith Peacock in just presenting the public record in terms of salary and pension and property tax levy and property tax cheating by the incumbent mayor, Dan McLaughlin.
So true fact record, not fake news?
Right, exactly. The public record is fake news if you don't like what the public record discloses, of course. But $200,000, we were not used to seeing that kind of money at the municipal level. I said, well, there's a couple of things. One is, we just got done with a cycle in 2016 where legislative races, you're spending $1.5, $2 million on state house races that are 100,000 people. I mean, Orland Park is 40,000 people, and a budget that the mayor has much more substantial control over than an individual legislator has over control of the state budget. So this, that's so much money compared to what we spend on politics in this state normally. Are you kidding me? Number two, it's the outside influence. It's the same thing as like our billionaires are bad and their billionaires are good. So Dick Durbin.
Well, he's a local. He's from Orland Park, right?
Yeah, right. Dick Durbin involving himself, endorsing McLaughlin. Madigan backing slates all over the Chicago metropolitan area and around the state. The money Dan McLaughlin has got started with, by the way, and has gotten over the years from the trade unions and Chicago, permanent financial benefactors for the Democrats. Like all that outside money is fine. All those outside influences are fine. J.B. Pritzker and Dan Biss can go campaign for Linda Chapalavia in Aurora or for Roger Clare's opponent Bolingbrook. That outside influence is fine. That's participation. Dan Proft, the Koch brothers,
right,
the other people that have a policy interest and a policy interest that is not that is not kleptocratic, like I'm getting involved because I want, votes back if my guy wins, or I want contracts back to my cronies, my idiot cousins. I want him to get him a job. There's none of that on our side, but we're the dark money, even though it's all transparent, it's all disclosed, but we're the outside agitators coming in, and what business do we have in Orland Park? But everybody on the left has their business in Orland Park is perfectly acceptable, or anywhere else.
Well, that was a great rant to get the show started. It was good. I enjoyed that. But here's what actually underlies all of that I think is even more interesting. You know what they're really objecting to? It's not even the money they're objecting to. They're objecting to competition.
Yeah,
they're
right.
objecting to people waking up and paying attention. What the truth is that for the last 25 years, no one has been playing in this field. So all their money, all their assets, you wonder why Will County goes the way it went. You wonder what's happening in Lake County. You wonder why DuPage went from being the bastion to having Democrats where it should be Republican. Is it that these places changed and it suddenly became more Democrat? No, it's Republicans have abandoned the field, one of your favorite phrases, and they've been doing it for years. What they're objecting to is that people are actually saying, you know what, we're going to get back in the game and participate, and they don't like the competition.
No, that's exactly it. And the interesting thing is what happens when the battle is joined. So it wasn't just Orland Park. Aurora, the second most populous city in the state, you've got Richard Irvin, the first black mayor of Aurora, who's also a Republican. Not Linda Chapalavia, the Democrat state rep that represents that community largely, gets knocked out in the primary. She was the favorite. She doesn't even
third.
Yeah, she doesn't even make the general election, the April election. She's backed by Madigan and all those outside influences too. When the battle is joined.
Wait a minute, Madigan's not from Aurora?
Yeah, right, exactly. And so when you've got Richard Irvin, a credible candidate who's a longtime alderman in the city of Aurora, and he puts together the resources to run an effective campaign, he wins in a majority Democrat at present, majority or plurality, I would say, Latino community, and he's able to put together a coalition to win the Aurora mayor's race. So we're seeing that those are the things to me that say there's signs of hope. If people get the information and understand the choice, they're making a choice that is opposite the status quo.
Right. And I think that Aurora race, what's so interesting about that is, if I recall correctly, he's an African-American.
Yeah, right. First black mayor.
And a Republican.
Correct.
Wow. So apparently Republicans are really agnostic when it comes to race, ethnic identity, and actually care about the ideas. Is that what we're talking about here? And the other thing about this, by the way, that I think is interesting is the whole local play is hard. It's, as you know better than anybody, it's hard. It takes granular knowledge. You know where that granular knowledge comes from? It comes from people like you and Pat Hughes and Matt Bessler and other people that are friends of ours out there on a Monday night, a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, sometimes a Friday and a Saturday night, going to local events and meeting people who actually care about their community. Developing relationships and finding out who might be a good candidate, who can help out with a campaign and be an activist. And you know who's not been doing that for a long time, decades, is the Republican Party establishment. So This is a move from the outside. It's people from the outside trying to retake the political infrastructure and rebuild it from the bottom up. And it's in the trenches. It's difficult and hard. And why don't Republicans do it? Because the people that make the decisions at the senior level, and I'm talking decades now, not just now. I'm not talking about the current administration. We have a lot of work to do there too. But I'm talking about over a period of time. They don't make their bones this way. The Democrats do it because this is how their financial model works. They have to control local government and state government for all the constituent parties, the unions, the trial lawyers, everybody that works for government, to get paid. So that's why they do that work. And our agenda is not to get paid. Our agenda is transform the state and advance the cause of human freedom for people in Illinois. That's the difference.
Well, and look, how important is local government? That's where your property tax bill is determined, and thus your home value. And oh, by the way, as the analyses we've done in my papers, it's not going particularly well. So number one, you've got your government that is the most local, has the most consistent impact on your life, and it also has way by a wide measure, the most impact, good or bad, on your home value, your largest investment, at least for most people. So, I mean, in terms of like trying to participate at that level where we want to devolve power away from central government, that's the conservative reform philosophy, we should be more focused on municipal government, even to the exclusion, to some extent, of state government, or at least kind of recalibrating the balance between the two. And I'll tell you, it can turn around, not just these one-off mayor's races we're talking about. In Metro East, down by St. Louis, Madison County, the local conservative reform movement within the Republican Party there has completely flipped the power structure in Madison County, and they consolidated more power on Tuesday, and they turned back sales tax increase referendum on Tuesday, and they're poised to, close out the rest of the Democrats that are hanging on in Southern Illinois and in the Metro East specifically that are just doing that, just hanging on. So it's kind of a north-south thing that's going on. We obviously have to advance the conservative reform flag at the local level in Chicago, Cook, and the Collars, but you're also seeing effective movements that could be scaled and replicated up here in Southern Illinois in places like Metro East, which is a population center downstate.
I don't think people think about this. Everybody knows this pain of their property taxes. But, if you're roughly making $50,000, which is about the average household income in Illinois, roughly speaking, you're paying about $2,000 in income taxes a year. How much is your property tax bill? Depending on where you live, it's anywhere. I mean, if you live in downstate or central Illinois, it might be right around that, but mostly it's going to be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000.
Well,
that's all local government,
right? And it's not only the out of pocket; it's what it does to your home equity. So at the same time, you're paying $3,000, or your property tax bill goes up by $1,000, and that's out of pocket for that year. Oh, by the way, you just lost $15,000 in home equity because of that property tax increase.
Right.